right? Okay.
Please go, Sarah. We're ready to start the big questions with Dr. Nazeer Ahmed. Uh-oh, Sarah, we need you to unmute yourself and to start over since we can't hear you.
Welcome. Welcome to all of you who have stepped aside from the flurry of the news, who desire to engage your intellect and spirit, and who are willing to enter the realms of exploring the big questions. It's good to see you. Good to know there are so many people that are interested in the big questions. We thank Susie Cole, president of the Rossmoor Interfaith Council, Reverend Will McGarvey, who is the executive director of the Contra Costa County Interfaith Council, and like I said, the host of our Zoom. And Big Questions Committee, Ruth Ahern, Gloria Sunshine, and Channing Miller. And Channel 28. And of course, we extend our special thanks to our speaker today, Dr. Nazeer Ahmed. This year, we are sailing on rough waters. I've been sailing with my husband. And I'll tell you, if you're in rough waters, it's really, to me, it's scary. I guess sailors like rough waters, but I didn't like them. We need both science and religion to be our lighthouses. We do not want to get stuck in the shallows of just one or the other. We need science to tell us the facts, to do the continuous research into the problems and solutions of climate disintegration, COVID-19, the disorientation of our political process. We need religion to guide us through the tragic events we are witnessing and perhaps personally experiencing. The connection between science and religion becomes evident when we look at the mind-brain system. A group of scientists 2 decades ago did just this. 40 scientists, neuroscientists, physicists, sociologists, anthropologists met to come up with a definition of mind. The brain is easier to define because it can be seen and examined. You can actually take it out and look at it. Mind, where is it? It is hard to define what mind is. But growing evidence shows that mind goes far beyond the physical workings of the brain. Our mind extends beyond our physical selves. These two crucial aspects of the human, the physical and the mindal, must work together. They must be integrated. The definition of mind that these scientists agree upon was, I think it's a little complex, so I'll say what their definition was, the emergent self-organizing process, both embodied and relational, that regulates energy and information flow within and among us. If I was on that panel, I think I would have given mind a little broader definition, but that's okay, that's what we've got. If we can define religion as an inner process of the self, as our connection with the universe, as the way we perceive others, which will determine how we treat them and how we love them, then it would seem that mind would have to be involved. Dan Siegel, a professor of psychiatry at UCLA School of Medicine, says, the healthy mind-brain system is integrated. So today we're going to use our minds and I believe our spirits, which are part of the whole system, to hear what Dr. Nazeer Ahmed has to say about our big question this whole year. What is the relationship between science and religion? Dr. Ahmed holds a PhD from Cornell University and an MS and an AEE degree from Space Scientist Caltech. He's a former NASA scientist and was a chief scientist on the NASA Hubble Telescope and a team leader on the Apollo moon landing project. Wow. He is an inventor, a historian, and a former legislator. He is an ardent Sufi, a devout Muslim, and has translated the Quran into easy-to-read American English. Currently, he's the director of the World Organization for Resource Development and Education in Washington, D.C. He is our neighbor, a grandfather of 3, and he lives in Concord. Welcome, Dr. Ahmed. You're mute. Oh, there we go. Please go.
Am I on?
Yes, you're on.
Thank you, Sarah, for this privilege to speak once again at Rossmoor. Among the audience are distinguished men and women of arts and science, as well as inquisitive students. I'm told there is also an international audience. The classical approach to sharing knowledge is to ensure that it enriches the participant. We will apply that criterion to our association. I offer each of you a tree to take home. It is the tree of knowledge with 5 branches: the empirical, the rational, the emotive, the perceptive, and the infusive. Namely, the knowledge that is acquired through the body, the mind, the heart, the soul, and the spirit. The title of today's presentation is The Relationship Between Science and Religion. It is indeed a profound question. As it is with all intellectual pursuits, the answer is implicit in the question. 700 years ago, Mawlana Rumi answered it this way, and I quote, "You ride your horse from village to village, asking everyone, 'Has anyone seen my horse?' Modern man is like that rider on the horse. So engrossed is he with the physical and the material that he has lost touch with his own soul, the horse that he rides. In the Islamic tradition, the word for the soul is the nafs. Let us start with a little reflection about the sublime insignificance of the human. As far as we know today, there are 2 trillion galaxies in our universe. Each galaxy has 2 billion stars. And there may be other universes that we do not know about. Tucked away on the fringes of our own mid-sized galaxy, the Milky Way, is our star, the sun, and our Earth, a speck of dust circling around it. And on this speck of dust, there are 7 billion of us, each one with an ego stretching from San Francisco to New York. Insignificant as we are in the grand schema of physical universe, we dare to ask, who am I? Why am I here? We rose from stardust. We're lit up with the light of consciousness and dare to ask, where did I come from? The summary of my presentation today is this: science and faith are 2 mighty oceans. Whereas science is based on observation, measurement, and reason, faith is based on awareness and conviction. These two oceans meet. They do meet within the human soul. The human is a microcosm of the universe and the mirror through whom God reveals the majesty of his creation. The junction of science and faith is within each of us, not out there among the stars and the jungle of fuzzy and obtuse ideas. Let me start with a parable. It is called the parable of the candle and the sheikh. Mawlana Rumi, who passed away in 1273 of the Common Era, was one of the greatest poets to grace this planet. People in the East as well as the West consider him to be a spiritual master and a consummate exponent of the deepest longings of the human soul. Rumi had a teacher. His name was Sheikh Sinai. One evening, Sheikh Sinai was walking back home from the mosque after evening prayers. Darkness was fast approaching. The alleys of the town were narrow and constrained, as they used to be before the advent of the automobile and the freeway. As he walked, Sheikh Sinai saw a little girl walk towards him with a candle in her hand to help her see in the approaching darkness. The great Sheikh approached the child, bent down, and asked her in a gentle voice, "Please tell me where this light came from?" The child looked up at the Sheikh. Her sharp, penetrating eyes saw the great man of wisdom looking benevolently at her. His shiny white beard glistened in the light from the flickering candle. His furrowed face radiated the wisdom of the ages. The little girl paused for a moment, blew the candle out with a single breath, and asked the Sheikh, "Tell me where the light has gone, and I will tell you where it came from." This sublime parable, so pregnant with layers of meaning, is a useful preamble to our discussion about the nature of knowledge. Knowledge is a supreme gift. It cannot be destroyed in an earthquake or burned in a fire as the ones raging in California. It cannot be stolen by a thief or packaged in a container. It cannot be bequeathed from father to son as a piece of property. The branches of the tree of knowledge are vast and cover the heavens and the earth. The body, mind, heart, soul, and the spirit bask in its light. The propensity towards knowledge separates man from the beast. Animals do not ask questions. They do not gather data, build computers, and sift through the data to build the tree of knowledge. Man is thus a knower. Empirical and rational knowledge are the first two branches of the tree of knowledge. Empirical knowledge is based on observation and measurement. It is the basis of physics, chemistry, and biology. Rational knowledge is based on reason and is the privilege of the mind. It is the basis of mathematics, logic, computer science, geometry, and architecture. These two categories, namely the empirical and rational, can be expressed in words or symbols and can be taught. We write scientific papers, give seminars, teach at Stanford and Berkeley, hold Zoom meetings such as this one to share and build upon this knowledge. Empirical and rational knowledge form the basis of science and are the foundation of our modern technological civilization. One may ask, what is science? It is a rigorous method to understand nature based on observation and measurement. As nature is complex, we make assumptions in the process of unlocking its secrets. Therefore, science may also be defined as an empirical method to find the natural truth based on certain assumptions. There are two fundamental assumptions that underlie the pursuit of natural science: the principle of objectivation and the principle of before and after. The principle of objectivation states that man is the subject and the cosmos is the object that man can study with detachment. The principle of before and after implies that the flow of time is linear and every effect has a preceding cause. A lack of time prevents me from going deep into the philosophical implications of these assumptions. Suffices it to state here that you and I are not separate from nature. We are a part of it. We are at once the subject and the object, the witness as well as the witnessed. As Maulana Rumi said, you are not just a drop in the ocean. You are the ocean in the drop. The idea before and after may be valid in everyday lives when short spans of time are involved, but they break down for cosmic events. For instance, what was there before the Big Bang? Allow me to share with you from my own experience. When I first entered Caltech as a grad student in 1961, I had an applied mathematics professor who sometimes began his lectures with, "Oh God, make my world linear." For those who may not know what linear is, here is an illustration. If we know that a car uses 1 gallon of gas to go 10 miles, we calculate that it will take 2 gallons to go 20 miles. But is that necessarily true? What if the road conditions change? The road becomes bumpy and has potholes. What if you go up a hill on a curved road or a traffic jam slows you down? Our calculations break down. Similar is the case with scientific predictions. The fact that the Earth has avoided a major collision with a big asteroid in 1,000 years is no guarantee that we may not be hit with one tomorrow. The body is the means of interaction with the physical. It is the vehicle for observation and measurement. The mind is the instrument for reason, a vehicle for rational and extensional thought. It is the nursery for mathematics, logic, geometry, language, and thought synthesis. It processes the information generated by the senses, connects it with logic into a rational whole, and seeks to make sense of the cosmos. Indeed, it even ponders the possibility of heaven. It may come as a surprise to many that there is a mystery to the senses. The speech is not in the tongue. The sight is not in the eye. The hearing is not in the ear, and the touch is not in the skin. They're all attributes of the soul, the self, the nafs, the I as in I am. In Arabic, we call it anaya. Let me explain. Consider the sensation of color. Where is the sensation of color? We offer the following example, first advanced by Nobel laureate Sherrington. Consider a beautiful yellow rose. If you ask a physicist, he may state that electromagnetic waves from the sun hit the rose. The petals of the rose absorb all wavelengths except a wavelength of about 0.6 micrometers. Wavelengths around 0.6 micrometers are reflected by the rose, travel through the air, and enter the eye where they register on the optic nerve. The optic nerve sends an electric signal to the brain where it registers as color. In this so-called scientific description, the sun is there, wavelengths are there, absorption and reflection are there, the optic nerve and brain cells are there, but where is the color yellow? Is it in the sun or in the eye? We will immediately recognize that it's neither in the sun, nor in the eye, nor even in the rose. The sun merely radiates the light. The rose merely reflects waves of light. The eye merely receives and registers the light waves. Each of them participates in the process of recognition, but none of them determines the color yellow. The answer, quite simply, is that the sensation of color is an attribute of the soul. We cannot find the yellow color out there in the physical world because the soul is not out there, it is with us. The senses are like windows to the soul so that the soul can witness a moment of light. It is a moment of God's grace. Natural science does not answer questions of color and feelings. In the world of natural science, there is no color, no pain, no happiness, no joy, no suffering. It is a cold, empty world, totally devoid of human qualities. In it, the rainbow does not exist, only the dispersion of light. In it, love does not exist, only changes in body chemistry. In it, tears do not exist, only droplets falling from the eye. This is so because the seed of love and hate, of color and feeling, namely the soul, was taken out in the very beginning through the principle of objectivation. The fact that sensual qualities, love, compassion, joy, sorrow, beauty, enchantment, music, and melody are absent from the complex picture built up by science does not convince us one bit that they're not there. The rainbow does exist because we see it. Men and women do love because they feel, and they cry because they suffer. There is a deep mystical quality to our sense of sight, touch, sound, and taste, a quality that cannot be described using the methods of empirical science. In summary, the senses do not belong to the material world. There is a deep mystery to them. Eminent scientists have grappled with the question of how the mind interacts with the physical, but they arrived at an impasse. Here is what Sherrington had to say in his book, Mind and Matter, and I quote, "Mind, for anything perception can compass, goes therefore in our spatial world more ghostly than a ghost, invisible, intangible. It is a thing not even of outline. It is not a thing. It remains without sensual confirmation and remains without it forever. The helplessness of secular thought springs from the very assumptions that are made in building the edifice of science. These assumptions exclude the soul from the world at the outset. It is like the first gambit in a chess game. Having excluded the soul at the very beginning, we cannot locate it later when we go searching for it. As a consequence, knowledge that is acquired through scientific thinking is cold and logical, without color, without feeling, and without love. The mystery deepens until we arrive at the confluence, the meeting point of the mind, the body, and the heart. They do meet, And the meeting takes place in the soul, the self, the I that defines each of us uniquely. Do remember that from the creation of Adam till the day of judgment, there never was and there never will be another human being like you or me. That's how unique we are. If the empirical and rational were the limits of human knowledge, then where do love, compassion, forgiveness, mercy, and grace fit in? Love cannot be measured with a ruler, weighed on a scale, or calibrated on a thermometer. Yet the vista of love is vast. It embraces the entire universe. It has the power to make the oceans boil, icebergs melt, the sky and the earth to kiss each other. I'm sure each of you have felt the pangs of love somewhere, sometime, someplace, with someone, and the scars may still be there. The fact that we cannot measure love with a wooden pole does not convince us one bit that it is not there. It resides in the inner recesses of the heart. In all of God's creation, there is nothing as sublime as the heart, for it alone has the capacity to love and to be a stage for manifestation of divine grace. Emotive knowledge is the third branch of the tree of knowledge. It is the knowledge of the heart. This kind of knowledge is felt, but it cannot be taught. Here are some attributes of the heart. The heart is the stage for the emotive life of the human. It is where love and hate, compassion and mercy, charity and greed, forgiveness and vengeance find the resolution. The heart possesses a powerful electromagnetic field and has its own nervous system with a network of over 40,000 neurons. The neurological centers store data that enable it to think and accumulate wisdom. It releases hormones that send messages to the brain and influence behavior. Hence the saying of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, there is in the human a piece of flesh. If it be sound, then the entire body is sound. For the discharge of its higher responsibilities, the heart has the capacity to turn, not physically, but emotionally. On one side, it looks at the life of the earth and the dazzling riches, reaches out to greed to possess them. On the other, it turns the gaze of the spirit, contemplate its grandeur and its beauty, and bask in its light. For this reason, it is referred to in the Islamic and Sufi traditions as the qalb, namely that which turns like a gimbal in a spacecraft. Importantly, the heart is the throne for revealing divine grace. It alone has the capacity to ponder the majesty of divine love, to contain it, and to exude it to the body and the mind. For this reason, is compared to the throne of God. Indeed, it is the fortress of faith. Let us now turn our attention to the soul, wherein lies the junction of the two seas. What is the soul? In Eranos Jahrbuch, Carl Jung wrote, and I quote, "All science is a function of the soul, in which all knowledge is rooted. The soul is the greatest of all miracles. It is the conditia sine qua non of the world as an object. It is extremely astonishing that the Western world, apart from very rare exceptions, seems to have so little appreciation of this being so. The flood of external objects of cognizance has made the subject of all cognizance withdraw to the background, often to apparent non-existence. The soul is the horse that we ride, going from place to place, asking anyone we meet, have you seen my horse? Never mind that sometimes this horse behaves like a mule or a donkey. At other times, it stings like a skunk. Occasionally, it is a winged angel that lifts us up to the very throes of the heavens. The term soul is a composite term. It may be compared to a large house which has a living room, a family room, a kitchen, and bedrooms. In a similar sense, the senses, the mind, and the heart are parts of the soul, the nafs. The knowledge possessed by the soul is the fourth branch of knowledge, the perceptive branch. I'll merely enumerate some attributes of the soul. First, the soul is universal. All men and women, irrespective of their race, color, nationality, who they are, when they live, are endowed with it. Second, the source is endowed with a free will, and it is born free. Third, the soul is the cognitive element for all impulses of the body and the mind and the heart. Fourth, it perceives beauty, order, and proportion. It is a sense of symmetry and asymmetry. Fifth, the soul has a sense of justice and right and wrong. The will of God is realized in nature by necessity. It is realized in humankind by choice. The sense of justice is a uniquely human attribute. It is not an attribute that is found among the animals. Summarily, the excellence of humankind lies in the attributes of the soul. The soul is the mirror of the invisible world. In it, all of God's creation is reflected. It is endowed with the capacity to know what it sees and to act upon it as the anointed regent of divine will. Lastly, let's ponder over the spirit that animates life. In the Islamic tradition, the word for the spirit is the ruh. We do not know much about it. We know only a little bit about it. The spirit is the life-giving source of the universe. It animates all creation. It is the light of existence. It is not the body that contains the spirit. It is the spirit that contains the body inside and out. At the most elemental level is the spirit that animates all things. Trees, birds, animals, the stars, the universe, the heavens and the earth. It is not a dead universe we live in. It is alive. It reflects the light of God, although it perceives it not. In the Sufi tradition, it is called Ruh Haywani. A rough translation is the basic spirit that animates all creation, animals. The spirit that animates humankind is of a higher order. It has a heart. You and I are made of the same stardust that the planets are made of. But we are stardust which has become conscious and is aware. We as human beings see, hear, touch, speak, reason, ask and act, and we are responsible for our actions. This is called Ruh Insani, the spirit that animates humans. There is yet a higher spirit, which in its sacredness animates the souls of the prophets, elevates it, ennobles them to listen to the voice of the heavens and transmit the eternal truths to humankind. Moses spoke to God. Not everyone has that privilege. This spirit is called Ruhul Quds, the Holy Spirit. The knowledge of the Spirit is the first branch of knowledge, the infusive. Thus, the tree of knowledge, which I'm asking you to take with you home, has 5 branches: the empirical, the rational, the emotive, the perceptive, and the infusive. The empirical and the rational define the domain of science. Faith is all-inclusive. It embraces all 5 branches of knowledge. Humankind is unique in the heavens and the earth, provided with senses steeped in mystery, A noble mind crowned with reason that probes the deepest secrets of the cosmos. A sublime heart which is illuminated with heavenly light. A soul that is perceptive of divine presence, and a spirit that bestows upon him life, knowledge, and power. I conclude with a reiteration of what I stated at the outset of my presentation. Science and faith are two mighty oceans. Both are in search of the truth. Science is based on observation and reason, but it hits an impasse due to the assumptions it makes, and it stops there. Faith is based on awareness and conviction. It attaches no preconditions to its position and embraces the empirical, the rational, the emotive, the perceptive, and the infuser. These two oceans do meet. They meet within the human soul. In the search for the truth, one must not be blind to the boundaries that our limitations impose. Let us recall the parable of the 4 blind men who approached an elephant to find out what it looked like. The first one embraced the elephant's foot and said it was like a pole. The second one stroked the belly and said it was like a massive wall. The third caught hold of the tail and said it was like a serpent. The fourth one felt the tusk and said it was like a smooth rock. Truth is one and indivisible. Truth is one and indivisible. There is no scientific truth and a separate religious truth. The search for a meeting of these oceans is an individual search, and the path one takes to reach that junction is predicated upon one's journey in life, one's capacity to learn that is given to us by God, and ultimately on the grace of God Himself. Thank you.
Thank you, Nazeer. Now, I think we should have you say that one more time so that we can really, there's so much, there's so much there. I was so busy writing my notes, and it's like, oh my goodness. The metaphors are really helpful in understanding. Thank you so much. Now,
I can send you a copy of it.
Oh, would you please? Oh, yes. Send me a copy. And would you mind if I send that out to people who might be interested?
This is for all of us.
Oh, so how many of you might be interested? Just hold up your hands if you're interested. Okay. So maybe that's enough that I'll send it out to the whole list. Thank you. That's wonderful. Oh, I would love to be able to spend some time really slowing down and going over each one of the sayings. And also I will be able to see how you pronounce, some of the words that I couldn't quite understand. I'll be able to see them written. So this is our time now for us to ask Dr. Ahmed questions or to make our own statements. And Will, you did say that you had questions also for Nazeer. So Nazeer, please go ahead.
My opinion is best if everyone makes an observation, because this is a subject in which all of us have to learn. Certainly me. I would love to listen to you and hear your perspectives and go back home. I'm home myself, but anyway, I stay home richer than I came in to this meeting.
Very good. You're a listener. Yes, I agree. So please, whoever has a comment or state your own personal way of looking at science and religion. Sandra, did I see your hand go up? No? Okay. Oh, Leila, unmute yourself, Leila.
So Dr. Ahmed, thank you so much for that very enlightening presentation. My question is this: would you say that science and religion are two sides of the same coin? in the sense that both approach the understanding of truth, but just from different perspectives, but we're all going to the same place.
They are certainly going to the same place because the objective of any human endeavor is to find the truth. Science approaches it with certain assumptions using the mind and the body. Faith approaches it in a more comprehensive way using the input of science as signs, S-I-G-N-S, so that in the broader paradigm of faith, science becomes a servant of faith rather than the all-embracing know-it-all that some people assume it to be. Your statement that there are two sides of the same coin is a statement. I would modify it slightly with your permission to say that science is included in faith.
Science. Okay, thank you, thank you.
So do we have, Channing, go ahead.
Yes, hello, Dr. Ahmed. My name is Channing Miller, and my entire life has been a search for wholeness in all things. And as I approach the split between science and religion, I ponder the human mind, you know, the conflicts between science and religion. And I really see that as a matter of the development of the human mind for people who are entrenched in one or the other. I really like what you said about the truth is one, and science, there's no division between science and religion. And so as I'm like looking at some of the more modern scientists and some of the people who are exploring consciousness, like David Bohm, this fits for me. You know, this fits for me, that it's one truth and indivisible. It's not, you know, it's not two parts. It's a part of one. So I really enjoyed what you said today because it really sort of validated for me my own quest, my own search, and that is for the whole of truth. I know I'll never get there in my lifetime, but at least I'm on the path.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The search for truth, the truth, is the eternal search. Are we going to reach there on the day of judgment, towards the end of our existence? We will. The thing that I would like to share with everyone is that the division between science and faith is man-made. It is because of the assumptions that we have imposed upon so-called science, so that we can simplify the universe and make some sense of it. I gave the example of linearity, for instance. Nothing in the world is linear. I gave the example of objectivation, that we are somehow separate from the universe. It's like the fish saying that I'm separate from the ocean. Fish swimming in the ocean asking, where is the ocean? And the example that Maulana Rumi gave, namely you ride your horse from place to place and you ask everyone, have you seen my horse? So it is implicit and we must be conscious of it, and you're so right. Each of us has to pursue it in accordance with our life experiences, our capabilities, our assumptions. Always be conscious of what assumptions have I made. It is not the truth, it is still an arrow, a path. The journey is still there. The truths are still there. There are more horizons to conquer beyond the horizons that we see.
Thank you. Cecilia Menzel, go ahead. You're muted, Cecilia. Or Celia? Celia. Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm somewhat in awe of most of what you said, but I'd like to disagree with one theory, and I'm not educated. I mean, I didn't go to university. I'm well read, but you know, I've got my limits. I wrote in the chat. I really do believe that we don't know enough yet about the other creatures that share the earth with us. I think human beings are not necessarily better than other animals, because I think we're an animal. And that we really need to learn to respect them more, stop killing them the way we do. Millions and billions die because of human greed. And I get a little bit too intense maybe, but I believe we need to respect other life more. That's it.
I agree with you. I hope I was not misunderstood. I did not mean to suggest that somehow we should not try to understand what else is there on this earth as we should be doing. All I was trying to point out was that based upon our current knowledge, certain attributes that we seem to have as human beings, and there are some attributes that pervade other creatures. And we have to learn from each one of those attributes, learn from each one of the creatures. Certainly, the little ant that crawls on the floor has a great deal to teach us. And there are so many parables that I can relate about how ants have taught human beings. There's so much we can learn from birds. How is it possible for some of the birds to fly 8,000 miles, 10,000 miles without getting additional food or water, supposedly? There are things that we have to learn with humility. I agree with you. We have to be respectful. We have to honor every one of God's creatures.
Thank you, because I believe my cat has a soul. I believe all animals have a soul. I believe that they care for their children, most of them as we do, and that we totally ignore their needs other than they fulfill our wants and needs. And I won't say any more. That's basically one of the things that's deepest in my heart. And I believe that God doesn't like sacrifice, prefers good deeds. I mean, I'm naive in that sense. And thank you, because yes.
Thank you, Celia. I thank Paul Ridgway for telling about the participant list. And evidently you can raise your hand in the participant list. So Paul, you have your hand up, and you get your hand on the participant list by, I think, reactions, right? But Paul, go ahead. You have your hand up.
Oh, hi. On the participant list, if you go down to the bottom right corner, there's 3 dots. If you click on those 3 dots, you'll have the opportunity to raise your hand on the list, and then you can lower it there later after you've.
Oh, okay. I see. That's pretty cool.
So,
okay, go ahead. You have your hand up.
Dr. Ahmed, thank you for that whole talk. Incredibly inspiring. Just blew my mind, they say. I love that talk.
Thank you.
Sure. And I just, I have one little question is it possible to email you and ask a question later?
Absolutely.
How is that done? Will you put it?
My email address is known, I believe.
Oh, knows it?
Yeah, Will has it. You can.
Will? I don't know who that is, but if Sarah has it, I'll just ask her later. So
I have it. Yes.
Okay. Okay,
Yes.
Ahmed, my question is about how you said that science, the various branches of science you mentioned, seem to not study many aspects of human experience, like, love, suffering, and many things like that. And I don't hear you mentioning the science of psychology, which certainly attempts to study human suffering. And I think other things like love and definitely cognition and things like that. So I suspect that there's a strong psychology in studying human experience.
That's a very good observation and excellent observation. As we make more progress in neuroscience, as we understand more about ourselves, the gap between what we consider spiritual and what we consider physical will narrow, as it is happening at the present time. For instance, for a long time, people did not know much about the heart except that it considered it to be a pump. 1,000 times a day, it pumped blood. But now we know its electromagnetic field is more powerful than the electromagnetic field of the brain, that it has its own neurons, that it is capable of learning, artificial intelligence, store information, learn wisdom. And not only does it pump blood, it pumps grace to the brain and enables the brain to come on the rest of the body. So you're absolutely right. As we make more progress, the DNA, the field of DNA was unknown 50 years ago when I was in grad school. Absolutely right. We need to move from both sides, from the domain of faith to include and embrace the physical, from the domain of the physical to move away from the assumptions that we have made and to achieve that certainty of faith.
Okay, thank you.
So Roger Roque, you've got your hand up in the participant list. Roger Roque, are you with us, Roger?
There, I unmuted. Okay.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Anyway, my background is science and engineering background, and I've really enjoyed the talk in terms of pointing out, basic assumptions that never get talked about. At least never in my career got talked about. We certainly talked about assumptions, and but the whole scientific method is based on certain assumptions you make, and then you either prove or disprove them. But some of these basic points never got discussed. The other side of me is, I was born and raised Catholic and still am, and I think the Catholic Church and probably other Christian churches have really done themselves a big disfavor by building this wall between science and faith. And I'm happy to see that certainly in today's world, some people like, Bishop Barron and Richard Rohr and other people that I'm familiar with and read on a regular basis, I think are really working to try to break down that barrier. So I really liked your presentation, and I'm really looking forward to being able to look at the written version so I can also have a better chance of putting all this back together, because it presents a framework that I have not had before.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Let's see, Linda Carter. Linda, you got your hand up. Go ahead.
That was wonderful for me. Thank you. I'm curious about the power of the Holy Spirit. And to me, that is the greatest aspect of that which is available to all of us for the integration into the wholeness of all that is held in creation. And I'm just curious what you have to suggest in terms of opening ourselves more fully to the Holy Spirit, so that that which the empirical has to give us might be more fully understood from the heart.
That's a profound question by itself. In our tradition, in the Quran, it is said that there is not much that we know about the Quran, or that about the Spirit, or that something about the Spirit, but very little. Now, the Holy Spirit shows up in the revelations, as, for instance, speaking to Virgin Mary when she is anointed with the Spirit of Jesus. What do we know about it? Not much, absolutely very little, except what it brings in its wake for us ordinary earthlings. What did Moses bring for us after he spoke with God? He brought us the 10 commandments. We know the 10 commandments, but we cannot say anything about the experience that he went through as a prophet on Mount Sinai, where he saw the light, went in there, basked his heart, came back. Here are the 10 commandments. So the question that you're asking is so profound that we can only contemplate it, muse about it, reflect upon it, but anything that we can say would be trite, would be commonplace, would be meaningless. The only thing that I relate to in terms of spirit is its functionality. The spirit is what gives us life, knowledge, and power. When the spirit is with us, we are alive. When it goes back to the maker, when it goes back to he who gave us the spirit, we are not alive, we don't know anything, and we certainly have no power. That's the reason in our tradition, when someone passes away, we say, indeed, we come from God, and to him is our return. So I didn't answer your question because I don't know.
Thank you, though. Thank you.
Sandra, you have your hand up.
Hi. So you said two things that really startled me. You just said that the Holy Spirit anointed Mary with the Spirit of Jesus. So does that mean that she was pregnant already and the Spirit of Jesus or the soul of Jesus came into the baby?
That's, again, such a profound question, the answer to
You
which
said it.
I said it because that's in our scriptures. That's my understanding of it. The anointment of Virgin Mary with the Spirit of Jesus is mentioned in the Quran. And all I did was to relate to you what I have read. Now, those questions about the Spirit, the nature of Jesus, the nature of Virgin Mary, these are such profound questions. They can be, one can engage in a conversation, but those conversations have to be at a very high level and very private with people who have had the basic training and understanding. If we say anything in public, it can be as wrong as right. So with that, again, I will say I don't know for this meeting, but if we wish to engage in a deeper conversation in it, hopefully maybe after COVID, I would be most happy to sit down and listen and learn.
Thank you. And so much. And my second was, I don't know if I misheard you. Did you say that the heart pumps grace to the brain?
Obviously it does, because what is the blood? We ask us, what is just the blood? Plasma? Is it just fluid? Is it not the life-giving source? And in as much as it is the life-giving source, what does blood bring to the brain as it does to the rest of the body? The brain is the largest consumer of blood. When I say consumer, more blood flows through the brain than it does through any other part of the body. By grace, I mean what we call rahmah, the mercy, the compassion, love of the Creator, in as much as through the brain we witness the creation of God. That's the light that we witness. And the heart enables the brain to function in as much as the blood that comes out of the heart enables the blood to live, the brain to live.
Thank you. Sandra, did you have something else to add?
Well, yes. What I wanted to say was I was having recently an absolutely terrible allergic reaction to something. And so my heart rate was all over the place. And every time it would go back to normal, I would get very, very dizzy to the point of being fearful of collapsing. And I began praying to my heart to stabilize my heart. And without getting dizzy like that, because I thought if I passed out, I was at a home where nobody even knew how to reach me. I was alone. And I really felt for the first time something tangible, like I could feel grace. That's why I perked up when you mentioned the heart pumping grace to the brain, because I was just startled by that. And immediately when I asked and when I believed in grace, because I didn't believe in grace, but then, you know, I hoped there was a thing called grace. And as I was praying, something came over me too about believing in it, really. And as soon as I believed, that's when it happened. You know, it went back to normal.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that experience.
Yes. Will, did you have some questions or comments from for Nazeer or the rest of it?
There's a question in the chat room from Muhammad Jawaid. As science believes in human evolution from a primate entity, whereas Abrahamic religions say God created Adam, how would you contextualize in simplistic ways to today's youth? And how can you explain the signs of God that are in all faith scriptures in a scientific context or mannerisms?
As far as the first question is concerned, it always shows up. Whenever we discuss science and faith, usually it's the first question. I'm surprised that it's the fourth or the fifth question that we got today. I'll speak for myself. I do not believe in the theory of evolution. I think it's a great theory, very elegant theory. It has tremendous beauty to it, a compulsive power to it, but I do not believe in it for the following reasons. These are my reasons for it. Number one, the theory of evolution does not ask itself, what is it that it's searching for when it applies to man? We have to, if we are looking for a needle in a haystack, we must define what that needle is. In other words, we have to ask ourselves what makes us human. Is it the shape of our bones? Is it the size of our skull? Is it the fact that we walk on 2 feet? I remember in 1992 when I dropped off my daughter in medical school at the University of Chicago, we walked over to the museum there, and then there was an exhibit, obviously from some English source. And in that display, there were 3 sizes of brains. Size number 1 was that of an Englishman. Size number 2 was that of a German. Size number 3 was that of a Bengali, namely an Indian. Size number 1 was 100. Size number 2 was 80. And size number 3 was 50. So I said to my wife, obviously, the first one must be loaded with stones. We don't know. We have to define what makes us human before we search for it. That's one. Secondly, I am yet to see a scientific proof, a concrete proof, an empirical proof for the so-called spontaneous mutation. People say, yes, there is there, but I have yet to see it. Thirdly, the theory of evolution assumes the arrow of time is linear. It points in a certain direction. I'm not convinced about it. What is time? I can give you 21 different definitions of time. Perceived time, relative time, clock time, timeless time, timeless energy, etc., etc. Which one defines creation? Now, once again, it's a beautiful theory. It's a great theory. However, I personally, as a scientist, do not believe in it. I believe that things change, especially creation happens by a moment of divine grace. So the debate continues. I engage in these debates very often with friends of mine. Just this last week, I had a discussion with another friend who sent me a book about the irrefutable proofs behind the theory of evolution, that I want you to know where I stand. And there was another question, the second one had to do with, well, I forgot the second portion of the question.
Yeah, is how can you explain the signs of God that are in all faiths scriptures in a scientific context or mannerism?
Well, precisely because they're considered as signs. Namely, one way to look at science, one way to, for instance, look at the marvelous, sublime secrets that are within the human body, whether it be in the cells or in the DNA or in the cosmos, the fact of creation of so many different stars and universes and so on, is to say that it is not the ultimate truth, but is a truth on the way to truth, namely as a sign to something that is higher, something that reinforces the ultimate question, what is beyond it? And until we come up with an answer to the truth as to what is beyond it, there must be faith. For instance, I raised the question, what was there before the Big Bang? Now, when you ask that question to a physicist, they said that's an absurd question, and you as a scientist, Dr. Ahmed, should not be asking that question. But the thing is that the theory of the Big Bang was predicated as a singularity. We knew, for instance, the universe was expanding, and therefore you stretch it back, come up with a singularity. And I studied singularities for 2 years at Caltech. And for instance, what is there at the tip of an earthquake crack? How much stress is there? Mathematically, you cannot describe it. What I'm trying to postulate here is that science must be looked upon as a tool, as a method, as a means, subject to assumptions. It gives us good answers, good enough for us to do all the things that we do, and to give us the power that we have, even go to the moon and understand ourselves physically. However, it is not the ultimate truth. So when we look at science from that perspective, put it in its cage, or use it as an arrow, or use it as a means, as a ladder, then it makes sense. Then it becomes a ladder with its feet firmly anchored on the earth and the other end reaching up to the heavens. Otherwise, it's like a ladder that dangles in the air.
Nancy Conrad says, can you please elaborate on the infusive branch?
Infusive is something over which we have no control. When Moses went up onto Mount Sinai, was he reading something? Was it something that came out of himself? Or was it something that was dictated to him? It was dictated to him, thou shalt. The language is not, you read, you do something, but thou shalt not kill. Infusive is knowledge that is infused into the consciousness of the human, in this case, Moses, wherein the human has no control over it. The Torah was not evolved, it was infused into the consciousness of a human being. So infusive knowledge is knowledge that is not evolved. It is not something that comes out from the bottoms up. Science cannot come up with the 10 commandments. It may allude to it, it may reach similar conclusions, but the 10 commandments, the language, the tenor, the meaning, the power of it, and the pervasive effect of it on all humankind, that is infusive knowledge. It's knowledge that is accessible only to the prophets.
And Valerie Boyar asks, can you give us a metaphor for the spiritual experience? What does it do to the mind or the physical aspect of the body?
It transforms them all. The spirit embraces the soul, the body, the mind. It transforms the human being. It brings out water from hard rock. Haven't we seen people who they were steeped in all kinds of things? All of a sudden they change and they become so, shall I use the word holy? Meaning so good, complete transformation. That is what is called a spiritual transformation. The spirit transforms the human being. It makes him like an angel.
Robert S., you had your hand up.
I did. Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Ahmed, for this great time. The idea of science and religion being two oceans in search of truth, I think that is just so beautiful. It kind of reminded me of a duet. And for a duet to work, each person has to listen to the other's voice. Otherwise, it's not a duet at all. And I recall that you said science is included in faith. And when I heard that, I'm thinking, well, maybe science is explaining the grandeur of the universe to religion. But I'm wondering if religion is included in science. And I would ask what you think about that. And I would think if it is, or if it would be included, it would give meaning to science. It would.
For the sake of discussion in here. It has made certain assumptions. It has enabled us to gain some understanding of the universe and some power over the universe. Faith comes from a different perspective. If we can come up with a theory that removes the assumptions that we make in science, perhaps then we can make further progress towards a deeper understanding of the universe. In other words, how can I say that I am the subject and the object at the same time? What I'm looking at is the same as what I am. So if we change our assumptions and build other theories that include us, not as a subject, but as a subject and object, perhaps then we can come up with a unified theory of science and faith. Let's keep working at it, chipping away at it, as the neuroscientists are doing, as the microbiologists are doing, as the people who are probing the universe are doing, as we build more Hubble Space Telescopes and other Hubble telescopes, and we go from awe to awe. Perhaps one day, humankind will be able to understand the universe without using these props, without using these assumptions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Yeah, Linda, go ahead. You're mute. Okay, go ahead.
In order for what you just spoke of to happen, it seems that the language of which the human is currently using for understanding of the signs of reality seems to vastly needs to be changed so that the language of the heart and the Holy Spirit, which are so much more inclusive than the senses that we ordinarily are using, those senses expand so that the object and the subject are held within one field, and that field in its own brings the light to the being, and the light is somehow received in a manner that is beyond the linear meaning of words. And so it just seems like there will perhaps eventually be an opening of the physical to contain more of the light of the truth, and that a language will eventually be developed that maybe allows us to communicate more with one another in a way that's quite different than we do now.
That's excellent, excellent observation. Anyone who has written a PhD thesis will relate to the following. You come up with a formulation and you want to somehow come up with a conclusion based upon your formulation or theory. In the process, you start making assumptions because it's not possible, or we are not capable at this stage as grad students or whatever, to somehow go from the premise, that's the theory, to the conclusion. We make assumption 1, assumption 2, assumption 3, and on. We document them and say, based on these assumptions, this is the conclusion that I have arrived at. A good example, some people, just a little bit, you know, for instance, for about 300 years, people have dealt with what we call the Hooke's law, namely, when we pull on something, the amount of force that is required for the pull is proportional to the stiffness of whatever it is that we are pulling. And when I was at Caltech in the 1960s, there was one professor, Professor Fung, one of the famous professors. He was working on materials with memory, namely nothing in the universe goes linear. For instance, when we pull on a muscle that we have, it becomes more stiff. Most materials in the universe become stiffer as we pull them. So he came up with a modified law called Fung elastic that involves tensors and others. It becomes complex. Your observation is very sound. There are ways of approaching it. Either we can start from the simple and go to the complex, or we can start from the complex and go to the simple, if we are capable of doing it. Nonetheless, I do believe, I'm hopeful at my age, that humankind one day will come to that confluence, that they will be able to understand the will of God, whether it be intuitive, infusive, rational, or feel it through the senses, that human beings will be able to do it one day.
Thank you.
I would like to express that it seems that God's language is silence. And in the meditation practices, which are being encouraged, you know, by almost all religions and faiths, the meditation practice to go into silence, that hopefully means that we are quieting ourselves in order to listen to God. This is my experience in meditation. It's really hard to quiet the mind, of course. You know, I find myself saying, okay, God, here I am. I desire to be with you. And then, by golly, 30 seconds later, I'm planning dinner. You know, it's just but I always desire to come back to God. That's my personal experience. I don't hear any great things, but in the silence, when I can manage to enter that space, I feel such a deep peace and a deep sureness that all is working for the good. That indeed, as the Bible says, the Most High's rule in the kingdoms of men and women. And, you know, I often wonder about how they are ruling now. I mean, where are you guys if you're actually, you know, contributing to this planet, which seems to be in such turmoil? And it's come to me that if they have rules, if the Most Highs have rules, the rules might be the most good for the most people for the longest amount of time. And of course, that's the big picture. And it takes faith to accept that. There's no science that I know of that can prove that. So in my silence times with God, I find that faith that all is going towards God and good and love and truth and beauty and goodness. And this helps ground me in these days of such turmoil. I just wanted to share that that's my experience.
It's an excellent observation. The same technique is used in science and technology also. We call it the signal to noise ratio, SNR.
Signal to noise, okay.
SNR. For instance, when you build the Hubble Space Telescope, now you have a mirror that's 2.4 meters in diameter, and you collect the light from the heavens. But if you wish to focus on a certain star, what you have to do is to make sure that there is no stray light. You have to get rid of all the stray light. So you have to focus. And hence, the design of the telescope ensures that very little stray light comes in from objects other than the one that you want to focus on. Basically, you're collecting such small amounts of light like photons. Similar to a person focusing on, for instance, the grace of God. The Hubble Space Telescope, a scientific instrument, focuses on the object of interest and gets rid of all of the stray light, increasing the signal to noise ratio. So that the human, whether same thing in studies also, one has to get rid of all the other distractions we have so that we can get the maximum input from whatever it is that we are focusing on. In science, the idea of, especially in astronomy and in physics, signal to noise ratio is very important. The higher the signal to noise ratio, the greater the resolution that we have. Why do we build telescopes on top of mountains? Because the stray light that we see in the valley is not up there. When you go up on space, there is less stray light. But even then, all the other stars give us information. And look at me too. So you say blinders. This is my shield, and you can, for instance, look at the design of the telescope. It's not easy. One of the most difficult things we had was to keep the stray lights out. And not just the tube that we build, but even the edges that are built in there that take years and years to develop. So excellent observation. That is so true. We must all learn to focus.
Thank you.
And the Institute of Noetic Science is doing some good work on comparing prayer and meditation, and even the brains of nuns and Buddhist monks and others. And we have Muhammad Chaudhry with our last question. Muhammad?
Oh, thank you very much. Dr. Saab, it's a great presentation, very insightful, very beneficial, and very enlightening. But my question is a little bit different in this sense that I always have a kind of puzzle in my mind, a conflict in my mind and heart as to why there were times there was too much religion and still man fought and still man created havoc. Now there's too much science and we have now reached a stage that we can destroy this whole earth and much more within no time. So one was the work of religion, the other is the work of science. Will ever man learn to live better with a combination of both, honoring both? Yes, we talk that we honor both. Have we ever seen anyone who is inventing something thinking that it will be beneficial. Yes, we are benefiting from science in the field of medicine, in other fields, transportation, even in communications. But what about in the field of asana? So my question is, when will man ever benefit from both with balance and live in love and live in peace? Do you have any answer to this?
Well, an excellent question, first of all. As with any answers, the answer is in the question. It takes us to the area of sociology and history and human interactions. The key word is justice, balance. There is justice and balance in God's universe or in nature. That's why we write equations. That's how we are able to capture so much of scientific behavior with a single differential equation or an integral equation, because there is justice, there is balance in the universe. Humankind is subject to two poles, right and wrong, good and bad, justice and injustice. Where is that fulcrum? Will humankind learn to observe the principle of justice? There are certain unwritten but universal rules that regulate human behavior, just as they regulate all other creatures too. Some of them are enunciated in the 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not kill. Do we observe it? If we don't, why don't we do it? That question as to will humankind ever learn to somehow come up with a balance between good and evil, between justice and injustice, has to be left to future generations. We certainly have not arrived at that stage as yet. Science has helped us gain power. Science has helped us gain some more understanding and hopefully some more control of our physical self. Certainly, we live a little better, eat a little better too, live a little longer, drive faster, ride airplanes, go to the moon, understand DNA. We store a lot more information, but have we learned to use that information correctly? That is an ethical question, and the ethical question can be answered by only the generations of the future. That is where spirituality comes in. That's where guidance comes in. That's where a higher understanding of all faiths has to come in. Not in the rituals, not in the do's and the don'ts, but the essence of faith. The essence of faith is love. The essence of faith is forgiveness. The essence of faith is compassion and mercy and giving. The essence of faith is to serve. If I serve you, you serve your neighbor, and the neighbor serves the third one, etc., all the way back to us, how beautiful will the world be? I conclude by quoting from the Quran, wherein it says, I created not beings of fire and beings of clay, except to serve. Except to serve. And this is what is lacking in human beings. We don't serve. We want what the other person has. It's a way of looking at it. I'm sure each of you has an insight into what it takes for humankind to get back to that fulcrum of justice. And that is just some insight from what little I know. I crave your indulgence if I said something in there that is contrary to what you believe in, or I said something that may take some people in a certain direction. That's what little I know, and all I've tried to do is to share it with you.
Thank you.
And an excellent job you have done. I leave looking forward to reading. You're going to send your talk to me, and then I will send it out to just a whole big questions list. I thank you so much, Dr. Ahmed, Nazeer, for your well thought out, inspiring pictures. I love the metaphors you use. I'm going to go away with this metaphor of a person riding the horse from village to village, wondering if anybody has seen their horse. I think, you know, people are dying, searching for the God that lives within them. They're searching all over, and the light of God lives within each of us. And you brought that out beautifully. So I thank you so much once again for your time and energy and insights. And thank you all for coming. I'm sure that we could continue this. I feel like we're going away hot, and that's a good way to leave it. We want more, and we will go in our own lives and seek for more.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Will. And, you know, I believe that this will end our big questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, Dr.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was really wonderful.
Thank you.
Have a great International Day of Peace. The Interfaith Council's program is tonight at 7 o'clock, and you can find the information on our website, interfaithccc.org. Have a great day.
Thank you, Will.
Thank you. Thank you again. Thank you again. Bye-bye.
Bye.